certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decision of the Metro Historic Zoning Commission. First thing on the agenda is adoption of our September 2023 minutes. Commissioners?
Move to adopt.
Move to adopt. Second by Dr. Williams. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. Ms. Ziegler, any changes to our agenda today?
Yes, we have just two this time. Both of them are coming off because of notification requirements not met. And that's number 24, which is 400 Broadway, and number 27, which is 915 Emmett Avenue.
Okay. With those changes, is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Vice Chair is accepted. Second by Commissioner Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes as well. Thank you. I think we would like to welcome a new council member, and please come forward. Oh, just for an introduction, because we welcome you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, now you can hear me. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Chair, and it's great to see so many familiar faces and names, and then some new ones too, so thank you so much. My name is Brenda Gadd, and I'm a newly elected council member for representing District 24, and very fortunate to have several constituents here from the Neighborhood Association as well. And so if it's okay with you, I'll say just a couple of remarks, or I can save that.
Absolutely. We'll give you the table.
Okay, well, I'll keep it short, and hopefully it's sweet, but definitely short. So thank you all again for your service, and thank you to the staff. I know the work can probably feel thankless, but we thank you for all of your diligence and all of your work. I am here today specifically to support staff recommendations on a property at 3806 Central Avenue, and it's an outbuilding violation, and that is on the regular part of the agenda that you all have approved, and I believe that is item number 21 on the regular agenda. So I did want to just voice my support for the staff recommendations. I know we'll have some members of the neighborhood who may also want to speak. And then if the commission so chooses to make that adoption of those neighborhood recommendation, just look forward to staff working in collaboration with the homeowners to correct any of the issues that need to be in compliance. I know it's always an extra cost and expense, and so we recognize that, and so would ask staff to work in good faith, assuming that is going to be reciprocated by the homeowners. So that is all the statements I have at the moment. I do appreciate, I know we've got an incredible neighborhood association with an incredible committee and committed neighbors who do take so much of this work incredibly seriously. And so I'm really appreciative of them and all of the work and the communications they've had with neighbors. And so to maintain a neighborhood that's one filled with care, but also in compliance takes a lot of work. So I think their job is much harder than mine. So thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you, Counselor. Again, thank you for your service to our Davidson County. Thank you. Consent agenda.
Okay. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the public or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be heard at the end of the agenda. I'm going to read each item separately, and if you would like it removed from consent, please raise your hand. First, we have 1010 Granada Court. It's new construction of an outbuilding. 2006 Beechwood Avenue, new construction of an addition. 405 Rudolph Avenue, new construction of an addition. 949 Russell Street, appurtenances, it's a fence violation. 5494 Brick Church Pike, new construction of infill. 2037 Elliott Avenue, new construction of an addition. 855 Bradford Avenue, new construction of an addition. 2113 Natchez Trace, new construction of an addition. 1301 Clayton Avenue, new construction of an addition. 306 Elmington Avenue, new construction of an outbuilding. 1008 Montrose Avenue, new construction of an addition, it's a violation. 411 Broadway, new construction, addition, revision. 4406 Nebraska Avenue, new construction, addition and outbuilding with a setback determination. 3619 Whitland Avenue, new construction of an addition. 3500 Murphy Road, new construction of an addition with a setback determination. Staff recommends approval of the items on the consent agenda with the applicable conditions, finding the applications to meet the design guidelines of their respective overlays.
I do have a question. So I think you did mention administrative permits. How many did we have this month?
Correct, I neglected to mention administrative permits issued for the month.
19.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record.
Yep.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, and seeing no hands in the gallery, I move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Commissioner Mosley? Commissioner Mosley, first, and Vice Chair has seconded. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, so the first violation today is at 1402 Beechwood Avenue. This is an economic hardship case where demolition has already begun on the primary structure. A full background of this project has been provided in the staff report, but I'll provide some highlights just for context. A permit for an addition was issued back in December of 2021 with a revision issued in August of 2022. When work began, there were multiple violations that were found by staff during inspections. These include shoring not taking place prior to demo of the rear wall. The front dormer, which is historic, was enlarged in width, as you can see in the photographs. The floor, as well as the foundation, were also removed without staff review or permits. The contractor at the time did not provide staff with any information on how this will be corrected or a time frame for the work. So in March of 2023, a stop work order was issued because these violations were not corrected. At this time, majority of the work has ceased on the project. In May of 2023, the contractor at the time canceled the permit for the addition as he was no longer involved with this project. The lender also took control and ownership of the property that month as well. End of July of this year, a new owner took control of the property. And on August 2nd, 2023, staff met with the applicants on site to discuss the project since it had been sitting for a while. Staff made the applicants aware of the process for economic hardship because they were interested in reconstruction of the property. For this reconstruction, the majority, if not all, of the historic home, which is contributing to this district, would have had to be demoed for this process. On September 15th, 2023, staff went out to the site and noticed that all the roof decking on the historic house have been removed. Majority of that framing does appear to be new and non-historic. On September 19th, 2023, staff was made aware that demo had started on this historic home without staff review and without staff permits. Initial work was just the removal of the roof framing as well as the front wall. After that initial contact to staff, all the roof framing had been removed. 2 of the 3 upstairs walls have been removed, and the interior framing and the second story have been removed. all without staff review or permits. Majority of the rear addition has also been removed. All that remains is the floor system on the first floor as well as a rear corner. Staff received a condition assessment for this property on September 19th. It was deemed insufficient, which is a lot of information, but a second assessment was provided to staff by the time the commission deadline came around. A second stop work order has been issued on this property due to the amount of demolition that took place. Of all the items that staff will only receive the assessments for this project. None of the other elements needed for economic hardships were provided. So both assessments that staff received were written by Greg Edgerton of GBE Engineering. Staff has no information on his background doing rehabilitation work. The first assessment stated that the building was without a roof for about 18 months. The second states that the building was not structurally sound due to exposure to the elements for an extended period of time. When work ceased under the previous contractor, the historic house did have a roof on it, just no shingles, but did have the decking. Most of the windows were also still in place, so were not missing or vacant. Also, the rear addition was completely constructed, just didn't have windows on the interior. No evidence was provided in either assessment to show the effects of the exposure to the elements. Other issues called out in the assessment include the foundation appears not meeting modern code and not being constructed properly. The framing on the first and second floor being poorly constructed and damaged by weathering, rendering the framing unsound, and the walls not being properly supported by non-conforming vinyl siding. No details showed the extent, The assessment did not go into detail about the extent or specific location of damages or the salvageability of the remaining materials. They also did not differentiate between the issues faced by the main house and the addition. New framing had been installed in the historic house, both roofing, framing, as well as interior wall framing. A portion of the first floor wall is pulling away from the historic chimney, but it's unclear if the wall can be braced and if new framing can be assisted to the storage framing to provide additional support. No information was provided for the purchase of the property, but the property assessor states that it was purchased for about $1.2 million. Due to the previous work that had been completed, the framing and the foundation were visible at the time of purchase. So the condition of the building at that time was highly visible. It is possible that the applicant did overpay for the property based on the condition and by conducting the work without the permits. So with that, staff recommends denial of economic hardship based on a self-imposed hardship, and recommends that the requirement that the front dormer and the second level are reconstructed to meet the historic dimensions and design to be completed within 120 days and prior to the issuance of any other preservation permits for the property. A lot of information. Any questions right now?
Does the current owner have a preservation permit at this time?
I'm not sure if ours has been canceled, but the building permit itself has been canceled. So.
Has been canceled,
yeah,
but the current owner now does or does not have a preservation permit?
I don't believe ours was canceled.
The building permit was never issued. They applied for it, but never got it.
But they did not apply to the MHCC office?
Right.
Just to clarify.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions?
Okay. All for now, Kelly. Thank you so much for your report. Is the applicant here? Please come forward and say your name and address.
Brian Perkins, 1402 Beechwood. Yeah, no, appreciate y'all having me. With the house, as she said, we took it over and it was in a distressed condition. We met with, I guess, Kelly and Melissa out there, and they, looked at the property and said, hey, we need an engineering report if this is going to be demoed. We're like, okay. And then insurance and engineering came out and basically were saying, hey, this property is completely unsafe. And I know we went out of order, but it was a life safety hazard. Even the engineer has stated that it was going to fall down due to the weathering. So, I mean, I guess as far as the process, what I'm asking is to take it down all the way and then go back with the exact same footprint that was there.
So you're asking for a demolition?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The structure that is there is not sound. All of the historic beams have been rotted out. There's not a true foundation on it. And that was not, caused by us. It was caused by the previous owner who'd had it for 18 months and left it just open to the elements.
Question to you. Is there a building permit?
No, ma'am,
Have
there's
you
not.
applied for a building permit?
Went to, but y'all had blocked me in the system.
Okay. And you've also not applied for a preservation permit with the Metro Historic Zoning Commission?
The permit was good.
That was canceled? So I'm
when-
asking you as a new owner, have you applied for the Metro Historic Zoning Commission application?
No, I have not.
Okay, very clear.
I was pretty sure that they told me I had to deal with the demo first before I could be told whether or not I was able to apply for a permit.
Okay, I'm not sure about that permit thing, but we'll probably get back to you. Do you have any questions to the applicant? Commissioner?
So just one quick question to the property owner. So when you purchased, I think you took possession of the property in July. So at that time, it's already some construction was in progress. So what was your intention at that time when you purchased?
Our intent was to go back with the, original historic permit as far as the building and footprint. As we got in and dug a little deeper, it became apparent that saving the original structure was not, an eligible way to go about it if you're going to build a sound home.
And since then, you proceeded with a permit of the quite a bit of demolition.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And one thing in particular I do not understand is the engineering report was submitted, dated September 14th of 23. And then very next day, seems like further demolition took place.
Yes, ma'am. In that report, he does state that, it is a danger as it sits. He had recommended I actually go ahead and take it all the way down, but we left it at that first floor with the violation to have this meeting. And my architect we do plan to apply for the Metro Historic Preservation Permit on the contingency of demo.
But when you took possession, there was some portion of the roof and some portion of the second floor and some portion of the dormer. It was more intact than current state.
Yes, ma'am, that is true.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have to ask.
Okay, thank you. But on that note, the dormer still had to be ripped off because the previous contractor and owner had built it incorrectly, and that's where the, initial stop work order came from.
Okay, is there someone else? Are you part of the applicant?
Yes, so we're on the design team from the architecture side.
Please state your name and
I'm,
address.
Lee Ross Dinwiddie, P.O. Box 743, Franklin, Kentucky, 42135.
Thank you.
Their intent since buying the house is to go back to the original facade, floor levels, heights, everything. The issue has been from the first level subfloor down, the structure is not what you would want in a new home or a substantially remodeled home. So they're wishing to demo with the stipulation that they're putting it back, exactly. So if they go forward and put the second floor dormer back, put the back part of the house back in the next 120 days, and then come back here for demo to build it right back a second time, the house will have essentially been built 3 times. Once by the previous owner and then twice by them. So they want to start over from the first floor, subfloor down, where the crawl space is too small, the foundation is insufficient. But on the stipulation that they go back exactly as it is. I believe we even have the same window and door openings on the front of the house.
I think I'm still questioning, and whether the other commissioners question as well, is that I think he mentioned that you did not have a building permit.
I can help with this because there's permits for
Yes,
different things.
exactly.
So they had a preservation permit via the previous owner for rehab work and for the addition. And then, but the building permit through codes is tied to the contractor. So when the contractor sold the property, contractor and owner, he canceled his building permit. They did not apply for any building permits through codes. And then the work that they started wasn't rehab and addition, it was demolition. So they did not have a preservation permit for demolition. So now they have an application into you for demolition.
Commissioners, are we clear? Okay, very good. Just want to make sure we are clear on record. Okay? How many more minutes do they have, staff? 7 minutes? You would have some minutes to rebuttal. I will open public hearing, so at the moment, okay? And you might have to come back, and we may have some more questions for you. Are you going to speak
Yeah,
also?
sorry, I'm Lauren Perkins, I'm his wife. I just want to point out that when we bought this house, we still had a historic permit. And we were going to use the exact same plans, the exact same permit that we had, the old contractor had. So they took it away in the process of this. She told me that they were taking the addition part away because we still have the DADU permit with historic. So like all of that was still there when we started demolition.
Is that correct, staff?
There was no application for demolition until the deadline for this meeting.
Not the demolition. I'm saying when we started this project, the whole house was already framed. Like it was completely framed and then just left without a roof, and like the whole historic part of the house did not have a foundation. So like they framed the new addition with a foundation, new foundation and everything, and then didn't touch the original house. So like all of that was already done when we bought it. And then I talked to Melissa and Kelly, and I was like, this is our plan. We're going to try to save this house. We demoed the whole new parts. Like, we demoed $250,000 worth of lumber, and we would have saved the new part, too, but we couldn't even save that part. Like, our engineer said, like, when it started drying out, all of the boards are snapping and collapsing now. So we took down the whole new addition, too. So the whole plan was to save the historic house, and it's not possible. And the first letter we submitted to them was to demo the house, and then they said they needed more information, so that's why the second letter is different from the first letter. And we had a historic permit until 2 weeks ago.
Yes, I just want to understand clearly your timeline, because according to the staff report, building permit was canceled by previous owner Brian Layton on May 30th of this year. And according to deed and all the paper, quitclaim deed and transaction, you took possession of this house on July 27 of 23. So that was way after 2 months, almost 2 months after preservation permit was canceled.
Preservation permit was not canceled in May. Metro Codes canceled the permit. They canceled all of his permits, so he's going under, and Metro pulled all of his permits because his license is expired. We had no idea that happened with this house when we bought it until we bought it, and we were not aware that if Metro Codes cancels your permit, also cancels your historic permit, which I do not think those two coincide. Because you can issue me a permit for a house without Metro Codes giving me one.
I understand. So when you took possession, because the permit was issued to previous owner, so
Yes.
you need to apply for the new permit, but you have not applied. You just
Because-
assumed the permit will be
No.
automatically transferred.
Yes, we tried to come down and transfer it, and they said that we could not transfer it. I don't even think the permit was ever even issued. We thought the permit was completely through, and then it said it was never even issued or paid for. So he did that whole addition without a permit the entire time. Because we came down and talked to Codes, and they said it was never even issued. And we've also talked to the head inspector of Codes, and he said that he would issue a demo permit if he could, but we have to go through you guys. So like, we went down to Codes to try to get a permit, and we couldn't do anything.
Yes, a preservation permit was revised August 26th of last year. And then the previous owner apparently did framing and foundation, but without inspection. So your previous owner did quite a bit of violation before you take possession of the house.
Yes.
But nonetheless, the building permit was canceled by your previous contractor or owner. And the
Metro
new
codes-
preservation permit was not carried over or not transferred to you. So therefore, you do not have any preservation permit or construction permit, nor a demolition permit.
I'm confused why the preservation permit gets canceled as well. I wasn't aware of that. Because when we talked to them, we still had it, and I have an email that states they were pulling it 2 weeks ago. So until that, we still had one.
The issue is the work that's taking place does not have a permit. So, you know, there are permits for work, for different types of work, right? And
Yes.
so what they did was demolish the addition, demolish part of the historic house. That work did not have a preservation permit, and it did not have a permit through codes.
Yes, I'm clear with that. I was just stating that the plan was to use the existing preservation permit. And this was not like an intent to come in and demo the house. Like, this has been a slow process that we were hand doing. If my intent was to come and demo the house, I would have brought in a bulldozer and just done it, because we spent over a month of labor taking it down by hand to try to save it. I mean, leaving a house open for 2 years without a roof is not gonna work. So if anything, I could have saved the new addition wood, and that's not there either. All of it is bad. Like, everything. Can I do this? How do you go to the next one?
How many more minutes does she have?
Okay, I just want to show you, like, all of the beams in this house have snapped in the original house. That's where it's falling away from the chimney. I mean, this is what the engineer came in and said, that he recommends demo. It's not even safe to walk in this house. And then Historic wanted more detail, and the example they sent us was us having a plan to build the historic house back, which is not possible. And I mean, how do I go to the next one? What did you do? Oh, this is the front part of the house. It was like this when we bought it. We have not touched any of this. This is what the whole front band is sitting on. There's 2 stone posts that have no footings holding that entire band that's termite rotted. I'm not sure how anyone would come in and save this. Like, if I bring something in and jack the house up, it's gonna snap in the middle.
Okay, anything else?
And then just to point out again that we're building the exact same house back that was there before.
Okay. All right, any other questions, commissioners? Okay, not at this time. Okay, thank you. Open public hearing? Yes, please.
I'm James Lynn.
Come forward to the podium and your name and address, sir. Thank you.
I'm James Lynn. I live at 1406 Beechwood, which is 2 houses down. I've lived at that residence since 1994 and have known the previous owner. Have walked past that house just about every day since 1994, both back and front, walking my dogs. The current foundation is the foundation that was there when it was built before 1900. It's solid on both sides. The front was never more supported than it had a few additional pieces of stone. But it's the original foundation that supported the house for over 100 years. Secondly, the new owners, despite their concern for the safety of the construction, placed 8 to 10 workers on the roof of that house and had it taken down level by level. It had no concern for the safety of the workers at the time. And secondly, you know, this situation is the result of avarice and greed. And we all know it, what the Laytons have done. This should not be rewarded. Our neighborhood has many people in it who want to maintain its historic integrity. And to reward behavior like this is a very negative thing for the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Please come forward if you are. Go ahead and try to get in line if you have other comments. We appreciate that.
I'm Kate Daniels. I live at 1404 Beechwood, which is immediately next door to this property. I've lived there since 1998. I too know the neighborhood very well, knew the previous owner very well. I know this house very well. First of all, I'm pretty sure that the porch was on, or at least portions of the porch were on this house when the new owners took possession of it. Because I went to work one day during this period of demolition, right at the beginning of it, and it was on there, and when I came back, it wasn't. It was laying in the front yard. I, too, was deeply concerned about the safety of the whole demolition process. There was never a demolition permit in evidence. It now turns out there wasn't one. It wasn't my understanding that a preservation permit included, demo it at will. That's rather shocking. There were all these workers on the roof of this property with no safety belts, nothing like that whatsoever. They parked 2 dumpsters next door to each other in the front yard and had people tossing off bricks, huge pieces of lumber. Various pieces of this landed in my front yard. We have people walking with baby carriages and children and bicycles up and down the street all day. I don't understand the issue that's being talked about with regard to safety as well. I've done a lot of research on this because I'm a writer and I write about houses. And this is either the oldest or the second oldest house on our neighborhood. Maybe it can't be saved, but it certainly deserves to be treated better and more respectfully, and all the neighbors deserve to be treated more respectfully, and the workers, than has been the case thus far. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Please come forward.
Richard Porritt, 1405 Elmwood Avenue. I live basically behind this structure and have been looking at this mess as long as all of my neighbors. Back in about June, I inquired about the property because I was following the legal developments that were going on, and I thought I might try to buy this from the owner, who I think at the time lived in Arizona, who was defrauded by the previous owner. My interest would have been to take the home to the ground and seed the lot, let it sit for a few years, let everything calm down, and then figure out what to do, knowing it would have to be rebuilt back to historic standards. So is this Joseph Joseph was kind enough to come out and just offer an opinion that he said he would take back to you, his colleagues. He took pictures, looked everything over. We pointed out what we thought were the weaknesses, which was entirely the whole structure, actually. And he said he could offer an opinion. It wouldn't be official. It wouldn't mean we would qualify for an economic hardship to take it down. But he would inquire, and I just needed to know, is there any possibility this thing could come down? And of course, the email I got back was it would be very unlikely that the commission would approve demolishing the entire structure. So at that point, it would not have been a good economic decision for me to push forward trying to buy it. So I just bailed out at that point. So I find it ironic we're sitting here now looking at an entire demolition of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Close public hearing.
Rebuttal. 2 minutes of rebuttal.
Oh, yes. Oh, we have 2 minutes left, okay. Applicant, you have 2 minutes for rebuttal. If you would like. It's not necessary, just so that you've heard public hearing. And if you have any comments to the public hearing, to the comments of those who have come up front.
To the comments of the ones that came up front?
Yes, ma'am. This is a rebuttal, 2 minutes to the rebuttal to the public comment.
Oh.
And if you don't have any, there's not a requirement of it. It's just that we're giving you the opportunity.
The only rebuttal I have is that we're trying to fix this house. I mean, the house was horrible and in horrible shape when even Brian Layton bought it. And it's going to look amazing once we're done with it. So I'm not really sure why someone would want to stare at the way that it is right now and why they've wanted to stare at it for the last 2 years that's sitting like that. And also just to point out, we did not take the front porch off. It was ripped off by Brian Layton. That was one of the stop work orders as well. So I'm not sure where that came from. We have also been involved in this whole Brian Layton fiasco, so I do know the ins and outs of what happened before this. We also got screwed over by him, so, yes, none of that was true that they said, so. And we were carefully trying to take down level by level. That's how you demo a house by hand, so it doesn't fall on the neighbors' houses, so. And we walk our baby through this neighborhood every day. We live in this neighborhood and we want to fix it. So that's all I have to say about that.
Good. Thank you. And we appreciate your comments as well.
Thank
Please
you.
know that.
Thank you.
Okay. Close public hearing.
So I would like to start with talking by accepting demolition by economic hardship, if we should accept economic hardship or not. So I would like to focus on that first. So this one, unfortunate incident had happened because apparently previous owner did not follow preservation permit or a proper process to do construction and left the property unfinished over the period of the time. So that definitely add on to deterioration that's giving. However, the current owner purchased this house with that condition. So the current owner does not have to purchase because they made a choice to purchase the house. So therefore, whatever the investment they made is not for us to protect, because for us to consider if it is an economic hardship is based on the demolition cost and remodel versus demolition and restore, not demolition, but restore to the standard. So for that sense, the applicant did not provide us anything for us to compare, because what they did was just one engineer's report and unsafe. So for that, based on that, our criteria to consider economic hardship, we do not have enough data to even consider economic hardship, because they have not provided any comparison, demolish by rebuild, and just follow the proper procedure and restore. So for that, I think I'm in support of staff recommendation of denying economic hardship. So the question next is for us to consider what is the proper way to restore the house with the condition meets a design guideline. So that I would like to hear from, our fellow commissioners, because, a violation was made by previous owner as well as current owner, because no demolition should have taken before they obtained demolition permit. But nonetheless, they have done quite a bit of demolition of this house. So, not only does not meet economic hardship, but they have done quite a, violation of the historic, guideline. So what will be the proper recommendation as a body with that condition? So that's, I would like to kind of discuss among us.
Chair, I have a question. To staff. So, or maybe to Robin, or to legal, I'm not sure. If we deny this demolition permit, what is the path forward for the property?
Our recommendation is denied because there's not enough information and there's a potential self-imposed hardship by doing work without calling us and getting the proper permits, potentially for overpaying. And then the rest of the recommendation is that the front dormer and the second level, including the roof, are reconstructed to the historic dimensions and design.
Okay, thank you. I ask because obviously precedent is always something we're concerned with. But there's a great volume of homes right now in the 12 South and Belmont neighborhood that are halfway constructed and just sitting there because of a similar issue. So, where I believe the developer is actually in prison, and the properties are owned by the courts. So this is going to come to us again and again and again. So I'm anxious to talk through this and try and figure this out. But it's a difficult path forward.
Just while the other commissioners are processing and absorbing, this is a very difficult project.
You know, what a difficult project this is in so many ways, and such an example of how many ways you can get into trouble with a project like this. I guess one of my observations is that typically in the engineering reports that we see, they are very well detailed and have maps and drawings and references, key plans. To be honest, as an architect, I'm used to seeing these reports all the time. And yet in this report, it's hard for me to tell which photographs are from and which descriptions are of the existing versus the new. It appears that a lot of the structural damage was in the new, but I can't really tell from this structural engineering report. I think that given the photographs, it makes me wonder if it's possible to rebuild the dormer on the front. And if the things that we've heard about the structural inadequacy of the floor are true, then it would probably not be well advised to rebuild the dormer on top of the house if the bottom of the house is not structurally capable. However, we don't really have the data to be able to make that decision. And to me, I agree with Commissioner Johnson that I don't think economic hardship plays into this, but I think that for us to really be able to make a good decision on this that's different from the staff recommendation would require much better documentation, especially from structural engineering reports, so that we know that, yes, it is possible to rebuild that dormer, that the underside of the existing house is adequate to support that in the future. But again, the documentation is just not there to be able to, for me to make that decision.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay. So commissioners, I think even if we have a hard time, the recommendation is on the table. And again, I think we've heard commissioners' comments. There's facts here on the report. So,
obviously we've also had difficulty in communication between the prior owners, the current owners, historic codes, contractors, pretty well everybody involved. And I guess one of my questions is, just to help clarify the options we have before us, if we agree with the staff recommendation and pass that, then they are tied to within 120 days rebuilding the dormer before other things are considered.
Well, the second level.
Right.
Because there's only one wall left on the second level.
That's part of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Is that how do you rebuild when, for that second level?
Well, that's our recommendation, is to rebuild the second level following the historic dimensions and design.
Okay. And as the staff, is that feasible? I mean, does it seem that the first level is intact enough, the foundations are adequate to be able to support that second level?
We don't have that information.
That's my concern. So I guess I see some problems in the current staff recommendation because I don't know that it makes sense to do repairs on the upper level of the house if we don't have the information to know what the lower level is. By the same token, I think a deferral by the owner would then allow you to go back and them to work with the staff to come up with a full analysis of the house that would give us more information to be able to deal with. It's not our decision to do that, but that's one of the things. So if we do a denial, do they still have the ability to reapply for next month's meeting if they have the information together by then?
If they have information that wouldn't have been available for this meeting. We did provide the applicant with a list of all the things needed for an economic hardship request, and we did provide them with an example of an adequate engineer report.
Okay.
If I may, let me ask you a technical question. So if we were to, because seems like we agree on economic hardship does not meet that. So I think we agree on that. So recommendation is if we take staff recommendation to rebuild in the historic size, including second floor and dormer and so forth. So if that's the recommendation but we are not saying foundation and how. So if applicant were to follow the staff recommendation and then try to get the permit to rebuild in the original historic proportion, but hypothetically engineer comes in, well, foundation is 2 weeks, so therefore you need to do work foundation. So if that's the case, how does it work?
We could talk to legal, but it's my understanding that your rules are you can't bring back the same request unless you have new information that wasn't available. And this house being in the condition it is, it's hard to imagine that it wouldn't be available because you can see everything pretty clearly. Again, we gave the applicant information on how to make this application, how to make this request to you. And so you can deny, you can approve, you can approve the demolition and allow for the house to fully be reconstructed, or just the second level. It's up to you, but staff was in the same boat that you're in now, and that we just didn't have enough information.
So after hearing, the situation, I think I am comfortable recommending staff recommendation because previously after this new owner took possession, that time there was a dormer. According to the engineering report, there was a dormer with some kind of, not siding, but what they call like a insulation type of the things attached to the wall. And then since then, if you look at the picture, next day, whole second roof frame was constructed. And so that was dated on September 15th. So somebody had enough weight or safety reason to construct those second floor roof frame on that existing historic house. So therefore, I have to believe that would be enough foundation to do so. And then a week or 10 days later, whole structure was removed again. So there was able to withstand those kind of, stress or weight. So I think seeing all the condition from the picture, I have enough evidence to believe staff recommendation will be feasible. So therefore, as of right now, I'm very comfortable accepting staff recommendation, deny the economic hardship, and rebuild as historic proportion as staff recommended.
Okay, Commissioner, do we want to try a motion? Okay. Let's try a motion and let's see how this pans out. Okay? Commissioner Johnson, would you like to craft a motion?
So this case, what's the address? 1402 Beechwood. I make motion to accept staff recommendation, deny economic hardship based on self-imposed hardship, and recommends require the front dormers and the second level are reconstructing to meet the historic dimension and design, and to be completed in 120 days from today.
Commissioner Johnson has made the motion. Is there a second? There is a second by Commissioner Mosley. All in favor of the motion, let's just raise our hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is unanimous. Is there any opposed to the motion? Let me just rephrase my statement. Any opposed to the motion? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you. Applicant, please work with the staff. Please get the correct permits and preservation permits, and hopefully you can meander through this chaos. Thank you for being here.
So the second violation today is 3806 Central Avenue. This is located in the Richland West End Conservation Zoning Overlay. The violation is in regards to the outbuilding on site and not any work that is done on the main home. So an admin permit was issued for this outbuilding in March of 2023 as it met all the guidelines and was not located on a corner lot. While staff was conducting an inspection of the neighboring property, we noticed that this outbuilding was all but completed on the exterior with no framing or foundation inspections called in. So while conducting the formal inspection on this, it was found that the overall height and the eave heights were taller than what was permitted and taller than what was allowed under the guidelines. The applicant is requesting to retain the outbuilding as is. So with this project, it was approved to be about 21.5 feet tall with a 9-foot tall eave. As constructed, it measures about 22 feet 11 inches with a 10-foot 7 tall eave. Under the guidelines, the outbuilding is not to exceed the height of the main house or 25 feet, whichever is less. Based on previous permits for the main house, the house measures at about 21 feet 2 inches from top of foundation. Eave heights in this district are allowed to be about 10 inches maximum, again, measuring about 10-foot 7 inches from highest point of grade. So the outbuilding does not meet the permit or the guidelines for this district. It is worth noting that the applicant did mention the neighboring outbuilding, which is located on my right. This outbuilding is next door. It went to the commission previously because it was taller than the primary structure. The primary structure in this case is about 21 feet. The outbuilding was approved at about 23 feet and was constructed about the same height. So there are similarities between these two projects in terms of lot depth, location of the outbuilding, and grading of the site. The primary differences between the two is that the eave height at 3806 is taller than what was constructed at 3804. Again, 3806 is about 10-foot 7 inches. The one at the neighbor, so it's less than 9 feet. The 3806 also has dormers that were constructed, so both of these create a taller looking outbuilding. It's also worth noting that in the past, when the primary structure is less than 20 feet, MHCZ has approved taller outbuildings to allow for an upstairs space. In this case, the house is smaller, it's modest, but still taller than that 20 feet. And again, the issue in this case is that the outbuilding is both taller in height and in eave height. So with staff recommends disapproval of the outbuilding as constructed, with a recommendation to reduce the ridge and eave heights of the outbuilding to match what was permitted within 90 days of the commission's decision. Does the commission have any questions?
Thank you, Kelly.
Is the applicant here? Yes. Don't have on street.
Hello? Is this on? Okay, this is a little hard for me.
Can you please give us your name
Yes.
and your address? Thank
My
you.
name is Martin Rosenblum. I am Ben Rosenblum's father. I am a restoration architect. I have flown down from Philadelphia. Ben and Amy are out of the country. He has been assigned by Bridgestone to another post, short term, and so he cannot be here. So I have flown down to represent him. I'm in a very strange position here. I'm a graduate of the Columbia University Historic Preservation Program. This is an article I wrote for the AIA newspaper in 1972, 50 years ago, about the lack of preservation education. Ben has been raised in a world of preservation. We often joked when I was driving the car pointing out historic buildings that on my tombstone would be written, "Killed by a cornice," not because it fell on me, but because I was looking at it while driving. I helped Ben with this. I urged Ben to move into a historic neighborhood. I might also say that I am currently serving on the HAPAC, which is the Historic Archaeological Preservation Advisory Commission for Rhinebeck, New York. So I deal with these standards all the time. I also deal with the need for interpretation. I must say that the staff at Historic Preservation was exemplary. They are knowledgeable. They were generous with their time. And on issues such as the dormer, which is brought up in this report, they told me where I was out of line or exceeding the bounds, and we immediately made the changes. I realized that unfortunately an inspection that should have been gotten was not gotten. And that's why we're here. However, I would like to bring up several extenuating circumstances from my background as a preservation person. First of all, and I don't have this in front of me, but in the neighborhood conservation study, so to speak, they talk and agreed, we always said, historic preservation is the first green. We preserve buildings instead of putting them in the dumpster. What Ben and Amy are being asked to do, I don't know if anyone's ever done demolition, but you can't drop a roof that is fully established by 6 to 9 inches because someone made an error. If Ben and Amy go and do as the commission has asked, there'll be about $100,000 worth of damage because the entire roof will be pulled off. Demolition stick by stick is very expensive, and things don't always, we may be able to save the rafters, but the roofing, the insulation, all the drywall will go in a dumpster. And for a community that is green, for a household and a family that are green, I have a very difficult time throwing $100,000 of new material that has a long life into a dumpster. I would further like to add, reading, when we write in Rhinebeck descriptions for people, guidelines are just guidelines. You cannot cover every single condition. It would go on forever. But the alley is not a public right-of-way. It is described in the code as not a public right-of-way, and therefore it should receive a level of scrutiny different from what you would expect on the front of the house. Additionally, you talk about massing in this study. Ben and Amy are on an angled lot. Such an angled lot that when I asked them when they came down and had me look at the house, I said I was not comfortable with their purchase because the lot was that sloped. when you talk about the massing of a house, and this is everything that we're talking about in this particular case, is the massing of the house. Our space between the house and the outbuilding is generous, and I have some pictures that I took this morning. Our house, and I'll pass these around, is 4 feet out of grade at the back. Mass means what is visible and what can be experienced. Discussing mass on a building by this is a whole packet that
Mr. Rosenblum, please stay with the mic.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, I'm so sorry. I'm a little worked up. Mass is everything, and I'm going to ask Cyril Stewart, you are an architect, sir. Would you not say that mass is everything above ground as you read the building? On that face of the building? Mass, if you're looking at a building that is massive, you don't arbitrarily say it's starting at a line that's 4 foot up. You take it as you experience the building. As this building is experienced for the alley, it is clearly subservient to the main house. It is not only subservient to the main house, but the garage, and this, by the way, for anyone who wishes to look, is the height that the back of the house is out of the ground. So we have a house next to us that has a gable end to the alley at its highest point, frontally, the same height as ours, whereas our ridge recedes because our ridge is parallel to the alley. Our building does not pop out on the alley. It is no larger in presence than the other buildings that have been built on the alley. We are quite far back. We are not a corner lot. We have built this thing with the kind recommendations of the commission, and someone did an oops. What I am dealing with is, because they didn't do an inspection, and it's fine to nail a contractor for doing that, that doesn't help us. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't save the building materials. It becomes a case for a lawyer. It becomes a case for an insurance company. Everything goes in the dumpster. From my standpoint, my children who have made that home will be estranged. And as much as I have always said to my son, Ben, a preservation commission is your breast protection that no one do something hideous next to your home, which, by the way, driving around Nashville, these 12-foot high 4-story homes popping in all over the place are beyond my wildest nightmare. But that isn't what we're dealing about. Unfortunately, they're not protected by a district, and we are. But you are going to make an enemy of a preservationist's son by doing this. He does not understand why this would be done. He said, I love my neighborhood. I chose my neighborhood. Paid a premium for my neighborhood. I would never step out of line. He said, isn't there something I can do? Isn't there anything I can do? Can I give $10,000 for trees? I said, Ben, it doesn't work that way. That isn't what we're trading with. But this is someone who feels, and if the neighbors oppose, he feels seriously let down as a community. He is out of the country. The house is built. The massing is similar to the others. It is mid-block on a non-public right-of-way, or something that's not viewed as a non-public right-of-way. He's being asked to empty it from the Netherlands of all of his personal things and tear it down. You cannot take a foot off the roof of a house. It simply can't be done. Can the eaves be lowered? Sure, we could extend them. There are many things that one could come up with that one could argue a point. But the fact is the basic nature is there, and the mass of the house as originally approved, the house itself, is there. The building is not 21 feet. It is 4 feet further on the ground from the elevation that you look at. And if you're looking at the elevation of a building, you take the mean average of the building on that elevation, and that is the height, not the elevation on the front or not the elevation on the side. I respect all of you. I respect what the community is doing. I'm very upset for my children, as you can tell. I'm shaking. And I hope they will see reason. This is a good family. This is not a developer. And I must say, even
Mr.
staff,
Rosenblum, because you have traveled so far, we're going to give you 15 more seconds.
staff was great. They said, we don't want these dados to overexceed. We don't want them to push. I understand everything they were doing. Someone made a mistake. Please don't punish my children. Thank you.
Mr. Rosenblum, we also welcome you as a fellow preservationist, just so you know. Thank you. Okay, open public hearing. Please come forward. Public hearing? We have heard from our council member, so we will take that and duly note that.
My name is Bill Gannon, and I live at 3519 Central Avenue within the Richland West End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. Together with a number of my neighbors, if you can please raise your hands, we are here to support the staff's recommendation that the outbuilding violation at 3806 be corrected. Specifically, we ask that you require the homeowners to reduce the ridge and eaves heights of the newly constructed outbuilding to measure what was originally permitted. It is certainly awkward to make this request, knowing that it affects a neighbor and that the garage has already been built. However, our design guidelines are only meaningful if they're followed consistently. Your packet includes letters supporting the staff recommendation that were written by the Neighborhood Association, its Historic Preservation and Zoning Committee, and several neighbors. Thank you for your help to protect the historic character of our neighborhood by enforcing the Richland West End design guidelines. Once again, we know this is a very difficult recommendation, but at the same time, if our guidelines are not upheld, we just become one exception after the next. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gannon, and to the Neighborhood Association.
Good afternoon. My name is John Broderick with Broderick Builders. We're the general contractor that constructed this outbuilding. I'd just like to explain to the group why it's 7 inches taller at the eave line. I'd like to go back and say I've been remodeling in this area for about 40 years. I grew up in this area. We take very high regard in what Broderick Builders does in this community and all the surrounding communities as far as high quality work. And I feel like we've got a beautiful garage that is not obtrusive to any other thing on the alley. It's the same height as the garage next door to it. Much more attractive in my opinion because the eave faces the alley as opposed to the gable as the one next door to it, which appears to be 50% taller than the one that we built. It's not higher than the existing ridge line on the house from a visual standpoint and cannot be seen from Central Avenue. The reason it's taller
Mr. Broderick,
is because...
Mr. Broderick, hold on a moment. Our legal has something for you.
I'm sorry. Can you clarify, sir, are you speaking on behalf of the applicant or are you speaking as a member of the public?
I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, I guess. I'm the general contractor for the job.
So the initial presentation time for the applicant, your presentation is meant to be part of that presentation time, and it's not appropriate for you to speak as part of the public at this moment.
Okay, so I should stop.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any further public comment? We do have on record public comment that was in SharePoint, so we do note that. Are there others in the chamber that have other comments, public comments? Seeing none? Okay, I will close public comment unless there's someone else. Please come forward.
Hi there. Thank you all. appreciate what you do. I'm a member of the community over there I'm on 3705 Westbrook. My name is Karen Schneider. There were a few things that did not get mentioned. One is we do not do dadoos in our community. And so something was stated as being a dadu, but we do not do those. We also believe it is only correct that MHCC follow the same logic and require the owners of 3806 Central to do the same. The situation is similar to another recent violation at 3709 Central. In that case, MHCC voted to have the homeowners remove the second floor and rebuild the structure to meet the permitted plans. So we believe it is only correct that MHCC follow that same logic and require the owners of 3806 to do the same. To not would murky the waters of what would be allowed in the future when other homeowners violate the permitted plans. It is disappointing and frustrating that homeowners are building structures in violation to the guidelines. We as residents recognize the financial impact of having to correct violations. However, if the historic guidelines are to have any merit, the guidelines must be adhered to. Sincerely, Richland West End Neighborhood Association. Thank you.
Thank you to the Neighborhood Association as well. Anyone else? Okay. Close public hearing. Commissioners? And we may bring back the builder. So he may have a chance to still have comment.
I've read the information that was additional information, I think, that was passed around, or no. Actually, no, it's in the presentation that Broderick Builders had given an explanation of 7 inches of height. I mean, from my end, well, I understand and can see how that would happen. Depends on where you measure from as to which part of the plans and the engineered drawings I don't say take precedence, which ones you decide to follow. If you can either go up or you can stay floor to floor, and that means the ceiling's less tall from an engineering perspective. And the choice was to go, further up. That is what it is. Certainly in terms of meeting a height regulation, you would generally go in the other direction. So I certainly understand why that is the case. And I'll, it's unfortunate, but I think as the Neighborhood Association has pointed out, and as we previously decided, we're rather firm on this issue.
Madam Chair, I do appreciate a passionate plea from applicant's father, Mr. Rosenblum, and fellow preservationist. I do understand, where he's coming from, but however, we do have a guideline, and I do appreciate a letter from Mr. Broderick, and I understand why the, discrepancy came and 7 inch, but it's not a 7 inch because the problem is the eve height was approved to 9 feet, but it was built 10 feet 7 inch. So it's not a 7 inch more, but rather 1 feet 7 inches more. And also approved ridge height was 21 feet 6 inches, but it was built 22 feet 11 inches. So the problem in here, I understand, probably at the construction site, sometimes may have to make a decision, but I would like to, or the contractor, if that's the case, have to make the building what was permitted, especially higher. I think correct course of the action will be come back to our staff and amend the permit and then build accordingly. So this step was omitted. That's why, we are here at this stage. So I understand sometimes, contractor or builder may do that to on behalf or benefit of the homeowner, but sometimes it does not work that way. So I would like to encourage whomever coming after, if anybody's watching, just follow the permit and try to build as permitted. And if for whatever the reason it's not possible, just come back to the staff and try to work with the staff to amend it. So that will save everybody time. So for that reason, I think staff analysis, I do agree with it, because other structure we approved previously did not have 2 dormers. So with the dormers and increased ridge height, it makes this building much larger than other outbuilding. So I think staff report and everything, why reason staff recommend a disapproval of this as built is quite reasonable and fair. So I fully support staff recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So, Mr. Rosenblum, we appreciate you coming down and traveling. We appreciate your efforts for historic preservation. We have equal passions for our historic preservation, and because of that and the neighbors' desire to have the historic preservation, the guidelines were carefully crafted using the skills of this staff and the neighbors and the council person and approved by the neighborhood. And the size of outbuildings has become a major issue throughout the city as they have become larger and larger. A lot of places we can't do much about that because there is no overlay. But where we do have an overlay, we do have the tool that is here. And whether the error in this case was on behalf of by the engineer, by the contractor, or whoever, clearly it was an error, and we see those on a fairly regular basis. We regret those errors happen, but the guidelines are specific as far as what the recommendations are. And I think with the council members' support of the staff recommendation, the neighborhood association support, number of the neighbors' support, and our precedent as a commission of not rewarding mistakes that are made by approving them. I think with respect to this project, I'll go ahead and make a motion that with respect to 3806 Central Avenue, that we disapprove this based on the staff recommendations and approve the commission's of the staff recommendations conditions for this.
Thank you, Vice Chair. There's a motion. Second by Commissioner Johnson. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Again, Mr. Rosenblum, thank you for coming, and we appreciate your thoughts. And
No rebuttal?
no, sir. Rebuttal has been finished, so.
Your guidelines are unclear. And the
public hearing is now closed, Mr. Rosenblum. Thank you so much. Safe travels.
So the third violation today is at 746 Benton Avenue. This is a circa 1906 colonial revival style home in the Woodland and Waverly Conservation Zoning overlay. Violation currently at issue are 2 dates that were installed without staff review and without staff permits. At the current time, the dates have been removed, but the posts are still up, and the applicant is requesting that to have them reinstalled. So one of these dates is over the walkway that leads up to the front. I am short, so forget about that. So back up a little bit. So there are 2 dates are installed. Dates have been removed, but the posts are still up, and the applicants are requesting to retain them. So one gate is currently over the walkway that leads up to the main house. This replaced a previous wooden gate that had been there that had not been permitted by staff. The other gate is currently over the driveway area. So there are 3 main issues with these gates. The first is the location of them. In this district, tall driveway and walkway gates are not seen historically, and staff found no evidence that this home in particular has such gates in the past, so staff recommends disapproval. That does not meet Section 2B 5C of the guidelines. as it would introduce a new element that was not seen historically. The second issue is the material per the applicant. These are salvaged metal gates that were made about 1910. Per the guidelines, metal fencing is only appropriate for pre-1900 homes. This home was constructed again about 1906. So it does not meet section 404A of the guidelines. The final issue is with the height. Both gates exceed the 4-foot height maximum for fences and gates in these locations. The walkway gate measures about 7'3", while the driveway gate measures about 6'8" at the highest point. So it does not meet section 404B of the guidelines. So with that, staff recommends disapproval of the two sets of gates at 746 Benton Avenue, finding that they do not meet the guidelines. Staff recommends that the posts be removed within 30 days of the commission's decision. Any questions?
Thank you, Kelly.
Is that
Applicant?
here?
Good afternoon. Blake Daniels with Daniels Chandler Architects. I'll be representative for the owner here at 746 Benton Avenue. These are two gates being replaced where two gates previously existed. I think the homeowner thought they were doing the right thing by going and buying salvage gates that replaced old wooden gates that had no transparency through it. It's very solid. There's a huge hedge there as well. So they were trying to increase the visibility. You probably have an opacity rating now of around 60 or 70%, where previously it was much, much lower. And so they're asking if they can maintain them since they are salvage gates. They were made in the early 1900s, similar to the same time period as this house. The homeowner is also willing to, if possible, because of the nature of they want the security there on the street, if they can modify the gates to a recommended height as well. I don't know that we can get it down to 4 foot, but they would be able to reduce the size somewhat. Thank you.
Thank you. Open public hearing. Close public hearing. Commissioners?
I typically don't see somebody changing the proposal when they're coming up here to talk to us. And so I was wondering what that procedure might be. They propose to lower the gates, lower the heights of the gates, and I don't know, that would have to go through you all before it comes to us, wouldn't it?
Right. So we would need more information to understand what's being proposed.
So,
And we would still probably make the recommendation that gates shouldn't be added at the driveway. There were none before. I just pulled up Google Street View from December, and there were no gates there. There was a short gate at the walkway, and that's something that could be approved administratively.
so if the applicant wanted to change their proposal, then he would need to defer and reapply with the.
Well, I think the issue at hand is what he's requested, which is to keep the gates.
Okay.
So I think you should probably rule on that, and that doesn't preclude them from coming back with a different application.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification, Commissioner and Robin. Okay, any questions? Or is there a motion? Any discussion? Further discussion?
Did you open public comment? Thank you, sorry.
Sorry, opened and closed already. It was too quick, Robin, I'm sorry.
With respect to 746 Benton Boulevard, I'm compelled by the staff's analysis here, the absence of a gate at the, or any supporting absence, or supporting evidence of a gate at that location recently or historically and given that the front gate is not compliant with guidelines for gates in height, I think that staff has also historic applicability, or the historic nature, period appropriateness, maybe is a better way to describe that, is also a question here. I would move for approval of 746 Benton per the staff's recommendation, which is disapproval of the gates.
There's a motion by Commissioner Mosley and a second by Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you.
So this is the final violation for the day. It's at 816 Bostable. This is a pre-1897 Italianate frame home that contributes to the Edgefield Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. This home currently has multiple administrative permits that have been issued. The one currently at issue is for the reconstruction of a rear portion of the home that was issued in June of 2023. That portion of the home was historic, but there was extreme deterioration within the framing and other parts of the addition, so staff issued a reconstruction permit. During a progress inspection, staff found that the ridge was not constructed per plan, that a window on the bay on the western elevation was removed, though it had been approved only for repair, and that the foundation was crumbling and a wall had been removed in the same bay area. So again, this violation has three parts. The first is the ridge component. So as constructed, the ridge of this reconstructed portion sits on top of the historic ridge. Based on aerials and photographs, it originally tied in with the historic ridge and did not sit on top. Based on the information provided by the applicant, they stated that the foundation in this area was failing and which caused the original ridge to bow down, that the ridge was incorrectly tied into the home, creating a water trap, that the ridge was originally taller in the rear and sloped down to tie into the historic ridge, and that the original historic ridge had dropped. According to the applicant, that ridge is only about 5 inches taller than what was there previously. Staff finds that this alteration is inappropriate as it is not in historic condition. And if the applicant had proposed this originally, staff would not have approved the permit. So staff recommends that the ridge is lowered to meet the historic ridge. Also that the applicant provides plans or additional information on how this work will be carried out so there's no violations or other issues down the line. The second issue is with the foundation portion of the bay on the western elevation. It is currently crumbling. No masonry or foundation repair was approved in this location, but staff is recommending that that foundation be stabilized and be reconstructed. Staff is also requesting that if any additional foundation repair needs to take place, that we may be made aware prior to the work taking place. The final part of this violation is the window and the wall in that same location. That street-facing window was previously approved for repair, not for replacement. Again, during a progress inspection, staff found that the window had been removed and that the wall had been completely disassembled. The window is currently on site, so we do recommend that it be reinstalled. So staff finds that the removal of the window and the wall does not meet Section 5 and 2B of the guidelines, and staff recommends that the missing wall be reconstructed and the window be repaired and reinstalled. So with that, staff makes the recommendation that you see on the screen. It's very long, so I'm gonna let y'all read that. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Questions to Kelly? Okay, not at the moment.
And
Thank you.
Applicant is here.
Thank you. Applicant?
Good afternoon. I'm Randy Gore. I am the superintendent and consultant for the current homeowner. I'm going to address a couple of issues. With the windows, we did remove the windows in that area. Once the asbestos was taken off in the little offset there was a lot of rot in the area. Of course, we couldn't see that. And as this time has gone on, the rot is just getting worse and worse. So I recommended to the carpenter to remove the windows so we have them. We're going to reinstall the windows. They were not trashed in any way. You know, they are definitely saved. The foundation, I have a mason in place right now, and I thought in speaking with Melissa, I did have permission to redo the foundation in that area. But there will be an issue with the wall and all of the rot, because I think that the walls and the rafters, unlike the back part of the house, which I'll address in a second, I don't believe that I can jack this up or move it without the wall totally crumbling and losing the roof as well. So I'd like to ask at this point to ask permission to remove that short piece of wall and some of the rafters, move it back exactly like it was, not change the design, not change the footprint, but to rebuild it and just strengthen it up and put it to look back just like it was before. The issue, as you can see in the pictures there, the gutters probably hadn't been cleaned in years, so that's a very small 90-degree, and it is a valley and a hip there, and it caused a big water issue over time. So that got us the deterioration in the wall, in the foundation, and again, as time has gone on and we've been working the house, that small offset keeps moving. I think now maybe 6 inches out of plumb, leaning out right now. So the windows I do have, the foundation, we'd like to redo that. You know, I do have a mason on hand ready to do that, but we might have to address with staff and address the rafters and the walls there. Concerning the ridge in the back, our first thing we were allowed to do was to redo the foundation, and it had been redone probably in the 70s at the L on the back. It was only on piers originally. Someone came in maybe the 70s and put block in between the old piers. When we did this, we didn't change our footprint. Everything stayed the same, our dimensions, everything. At that point, when we got into the new build, the old lumber would not hold the structure, so we were given permission to replace the back L. But when we do that, we have to meet a modern code. I was strict in saying that we did not change our wall heights, we did not change our pitch on our roof, but we are required to use a different dimension lumber. The old rafters were 2x4, and they were on 30-inch centers, and it came to a 0 seat, meaning that the rafters came down to a point to the outside of the wall. When we're required in modern codes, we have to put a bird's mouth. We have to use a 2x8 to take the span. So we hooked over, but our main concern was to tie in exactly at the 0 point we had to tie into the historical house, which was the wall height, and to tie into the eaves on the little offset on the side. That was the only point we had to work with. We dropped our walls down for the thickness of our ceiling joist and a double plate, which would have given about 10 inches. But again, once we dropped that, it was all about tying into the original height. And that was our starting point, and our height we maintained all the way around the new construction. But we, again, let me just take a look here, please. Thank you. Like I said, the windows I have a masonry. The walls are a safety issue there. When we built the walls too, center is center, but by going from a 2x4 to a 2x8, it gave a seat difference, meaning instead of going down to this point to the outside of the wall, by going to 2x8, it raised that ridge 5.5 inches. But our goal was to tie in to the historic part of the house, so it looked the same from the outside. It did slightly raise the ridge, and also in working in it, which my framer was to be here today, but he was tied up. But I do have some pictures I'd like to present to y'all to pass around. There was a moment, I believe, 125 years ago when the house was built. from the back L that we've redone. Thank you. From the back of that L, the ridge was a 1x6. It literally, I'm trying to show in the line in the pictures that they're passing around, the ridge dropped 5 inches. It wasn't from settlement over time. The ridge dropped down 5 inches and was pulled a foot out of square to tie in behind it. I mean, I don't think there was any codes. It could have been a Friday build or something. I'm not sure. But again, I'm trying to prove in those pictures that that in the straight lines from the satellite picture and from the street view, that they do show that in the original build, it was out of square and out of level. That probably forced, we've come a little farther, and I think we have a fix for it. But again, I would, like to ask, would that be, do I do that through staff or through you right now? I can pass you this and just to kind of show you the rot we're dealing with on the, and then 2 more to pass is to show you the new build from the back. And this also shows where we had, before the new build, it shows the old section, the L in the back. And that was our goal all along, to maintain pitch, maintain wall heights, and tie in where it's unbeknown to anyone that with the L and the historic. We also had a progress inspection with Metro codes, and we were given a green tag so far on all of our framing, but he was pointed out that if we don't take care of some of the structural issues in the rot, in the wood, the structure, that we will be red tagged. So our goal here is to meet the recommendations of historic and Metro codes. We're kind of straddling the fence sometimes, because once we touch something in the house and a cancer, sometimes it'll kind of open another cancer. Yes, ma'am. This picture is actually still, as you can see, the black part. That is the old addition on the back before we were given permission to tear it down. This is the after. This is before, this is the after. Correct. We were given permission on the 70s edition, the old kitchen, to take the rafters to the ridge.
When you say permission, you conferred with the staff. Is
Yes.
that what you're? Okay,
Yes.
Just to clarify.
Yes. And I do have, if anyone's wondering, about what I'm saying, what I mean by seat, as the old rafters come to the outside and a new rafter, I've got just a rough drawing if anyone would like to see that. Pardon?
I have a
And again,
sorry.
a couple more. Just, no, they said no, they did not need to see it. Okay. You would like to see the drawing? Okay, sure.
You have 45 seconds on 45 seconds.
Also, I have another picture here to show where we tried to maintain the tie-in, to maintain our height, and our soffits. I mean, we want everything to tie in together to the outside. Unfortunately, that forces us a little in our materials and our ridge to get that little bit of different height. But certainly by the straight lines I'm trying to show in the photos, that was a 125-year-old moment, I guess, back then. We're maintaining our siding. I'm done.
If you want to finish your sentence.
Well, we're just trying to, like I said, our goal really is to it's been a dream of mine to do a house like this for myself, but I've gotten too old now. But I'm looking forward to bringing this one back to life. And again, we do have some recommendations for the little bit higher of a ridge.
Okay. All right.
So I've outside of your time, or if you would respond to this question.
Yes, sir.
Outside of the 10 minutes. If I understand your description, you've got this is your ridge, assume my arm is straight,
Yes,
and they went like this,
that's correct.
and then they went like that.
And they went like that.
Well, that's custom, is it not?
Yeah,
You
that
couldn't
was a
each one of
custom moment.
Each one of those rafters.
I don't know what, of course, we wasn't really looking for that, but again, when we didn't change our footprint to the rear, again, center is center, and our pitch is our pitch. We didn't change our footprint in any way. So, but that is how it is. If the drawings can, the pictures can show that to you.
I don't even consider myself a gentleman carpenter. Wouldn't be what I would describe, but having cut a rafter or two in my life, boy, that
Right.
that's where the skill comes in, because each one of those is different in every way. It seems.
It changed the hip. There was two different valleys. We were kind of trying to study it ourselves as well. We believe we can, pull that back together, not change the design in any way of the roof, but we'd like to get permission to redo the roof and remove that rotted section of wall so it's safe for the masons to work under. I just don't think we can move it without it collapsing and losing everything, and that's what we don't want.
And am I seeing this photograph correctly? This is just your pretty standard architectural asphalt shingle roof that's on this.
Yes, I believe that's the way it's going to be, yes.
Uh-huh. And it existing, it is that way.
Yes.
Did you, I was looking at some of the drawings, an aerial photograph, drawing a straight line on an aerial photograph is a difficult thing to, I guess, for in working with, in the realm that we're in. When your field investigation, that's where you sort of discovered this.
Right.
You're trying to figure out an explanation, like what's going on here, and that's, so I guess surveying that, or I'm sure you sound like you have the capacity to be able to use a plumb line and certainly know where, something runs from one place.
And again, we I don't know if we're trying to study that, we believe maybe they built the front and then came into the back, and when the little offset has a 4-foot side front, and that allowed for a full window to go in. But when it turns the corner, it's only 2 feet. So then they weren't dealing with an exact measurement in rectangle, and I think that's what kind of threw them off at the time and forced them to pull it out of square and out of level.
The part of the difficulty here is some of those quirks and have maybe retained their right historically in their own right. So for us to go back and fix it and/or provide some permission here, which is what sounds like maybe you're seeking, we'll certainly have to consider that very carefully.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it.
Mr. Gore?
Yes.
We appreciate your diligence in trying to respect the history of this house and to make the accommodations you have for it. I guess my confusion is that the staff recommendation says that new plans or detailed information be provided to the staff showing the necessary corrective action, and it sounds like that's really what you're doing, is creating new plans, details, how you're going to deal with all this.
Well, and explain why the ridge was and how we've gotten our rot, why the windows are, that was my understanding of our violations, the foundation crumbling, the ridge, the windows. They're all safe in the garage. We plan on working with staff and redoing the foundation, new footings. Sure. We just have to be careful again, and the ridge might require some removal of some walls, but we'll put it back just like it was.
Well, and so it sounds to me like you're on the same track as far as that goes. The second paragraph of the staff recommendation says that talks about the bay window. It says the wall be reconstructed to meet the historic design and dimensions, that the historic window be repaired and installed. Sounds to me like that's what you're planning on doing.
Well, we have the window. It may need some lead weights and some new rope, to make them work, and cut about 100 years of paint off of them. But yeah, we do plan on using those. There could be a possibility. There is the old siding on these. But there is the possibility, because I've taken some off myself on the old L, it's super brittle, it's been covered over by asbestos, I could just barely snap it. It might require putting some new siding, but we, as you can see in the pictures, we've used the same beveled siding and the same reveal on the siding.
And I think with that, working with staff, they can work with you on that where it needs to be redone. Said staff also recommends the crumbling foundation of the right side may be reconstructed with salvage bricks or veneered with salvage bricks with a mortar of similar mix, color, and tooling to the original. And so it sounds like that's what you're proposing.
Well, we have 2 layers of brick on the old foundation. There's one to the outside, there's one to the inside.
Sure.
They're all sitting on dirt. There is no footing under them.
Sure.
I have plenty of bricks to work with, but we plan on putting back a block and then using the historic brick to the outside with the brick pocket and then pulling the offset out flush to the brick so it looks like it always did.
I guess my question is that it seems to me in reading the staff recommendation and hearing what you say, it sounds like they're very close to each other, that there's not a lot of difference in what you're proposing to do and what the staff recommendation is. Am I getting that right?
I would say the one place where we're off just a little bit and would really appreciate your insight is the roof.
I just want to remind everyone, you've not yet held public hearing, so I want to make sure we get to that.
Sure.
Once the questions are done, yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
I think it's just good clarifying because there's a lot going on and you did a lot of explanation, so we're downloaded. Open public hearing? Closed public hearing? Ms. Ziegler, I close public hearing.
For the record, just while we have a minute, this level of detail is the kind of thing that we're looking for, and I think in previous cases, not every house is in the same condition, but certainly the care with which this applicant has taken upon this project and the willingness versus some of the other things we see in our applications for economic hardship. Just kind of wanted to point that out while we're here, and it's a reminder to us that it's possible, it can be done. Strange things happen. Historic homes are strange and wonderful things, and here we sit.
Duly noted, Commissioner. Yes, very good. Very good dialogue. Okay, commissioners. Discussion. We've had quite a bit already.
So I think I can throw you the fellow commissioners about the understanding. Seems like, as Vice Chair mentioned, staff and applicant is very, very close, but teeny bitty differences on the ridge. It seems like the applicant is still unable to bring down the ridge, meet with the historic ridge height. So no matter what he is doing comes up like 5 inches higher than historic house. So yes. So what kind of recommendation should we do will be my question. So I would like to throw you the professional architect and, who knows the building intimately, would like to ask the question.
I'll accept the question. I'm not sure I'm going to provide a good answer. I certainly can relate to, you said nowadays you're setting out and you're building something square and you're coming to meet at a point, and then the geometry, suddenly you figure out the geometry doesn't work. And the explanation for why it is the way that it is really interesting. I think our struggle, if we knew this information ahead of time, what at least thinking about that, I don't know that we can, if we can imagine that, what would we do if we knew this ahead of time? The historic house is something certainly we want to protect, and I'm trying to remember back. I'm struggling, if you can't tell, in how to answer this. I think I remember a scenario where we had a swayed, there was an applicant, and there was a sway in the in the existing roof, a significant one that didn't seem as if it was built in, and I may be incorrect in that memory, but that, what I can't remember, so we've seen something similar to this before, tying a side addition or something onto that scenario is not an easy thing to do for a craftsperson, carpenter and craftsperson. So I don't know that we necessarily would have allowed the roof to be sort of torn off and put back, but it as I recall, this wasn't front facing to the street. And so therein, I guess, lies, I would really lean heavily on this, in this case, on the staff's expertise and maybe going out and seeing this in person. And perhaps that's not what they're bringing it to us so that we don't push it back on them. But it is a very strange thing to try to tie something square into something that's not square. It's almost like you just throw everything out the window and every cut's a custom cut and nothing, modern construction techniques somewhat apply. It takes about 5 times as long to build it. So how was that for a non-answer? I did the best I could. As a carpenter, I'm compelled to allow straightening it up. As a preservationist, I'm less compelled.
Would it be possible to speak just for a moment again?
Commissioners,
I'll let others.
what do you think?
I think it'd be fine, sure.
Okay. The vice chair and have said you're welcome to come back up.
We were presented, this is after I got the project, there was a chimney out the front, which Melissa and Kelly got me the picture of. It had been torn down by whoever was doing the project before, but I know the chimney has to go back. It will be a false chimney now, but it will go back. And there's a possibility, again, if we can do this on site, that since it's a false chimney, if I can pull that chimney back 3 feet, and that ridge is going to hit right to the chimney. And that would hide it. It's not visible from the street view by any means. If I could just move that false chimney back 3 feet, allow that ridge we're seeing now, then possibly redo the roof over the offset. And I think that would clean it up and still give it the historic look and kind of hide our slight difference on the ridge in the back.
Thanks.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In looking at the photograph that's on the screen now, it looks to me like and with the existing photograph that was there, that there was an offset there, but it looks like the framing that we're seeing projects out well beyond the original roof, and I'm not really sure why that's happening, and whether that could be cut back. I'm less concerned that there might be a small bump in that roof in the back. Certainly the way it's shown on this photograph is not something I'd be comfortable with, but if it was cut back to match that slope of the roof, and I would feel better about it. I think that I'm actually fairly confident that I think that our staff, working with the applicant, could find solutions for this. I'm not opposed to the chimney placement, but I think that's up to the staff more than it is to the commissioners. And so.
We're bringing it to you. But I would say that I'm sure staff is fine with reconstructing the chimney a little further back if that.
Sure.
Just something we don't like to do, which is design and process. So, Cyril, I appreciate you making that point, because it is, certainly it doesn't look like a 5-inch delta in the photograph there. And so, in the intersection of the other, I guess the bay that pops out there and the resolution of that and the placement of the false chimney, there's a lot going on there, and then there'll be a lot more going on if you have a rectangle that just sort of penetrates the roof at that point. That's a lot of things to resolve. Cyril, would it help to have the applicant address your comment about this thing sort of?
Mr. Gore, could you talk to us, the slide that's on the screen here on the left-hand side?
Yes.
It looks like that's projecting well beyond the slope of that roof. Is there a reason that couldn't be cut back
If
to?
the photos that I gave you with the straight lines, and that will help you too, I do believe that the ridge went to an inside wall, which was the 2-foot offset. On the offset, there was a wall there. At that point, that ridge started coming down. You know, we've got LVLs in that place, which are perfectly straight, but the ridge originally was way back, and that's where that 5-inch drop came in and the 1 foot out of square. I don't think that's the stopping point of the original ridge, no. But again, I was going to have my framers here to address that and answer those questions. But the ridge did go further back, yes.
So do you think this could be cut back then?
I think we can address it and make it, great for everyone, codes and historical. I think we can address that and get it taken care of.
Because I think that would go a long way for me to have it in the same plane as the roof there. So, take it back. And I realize you've got to take that load to the ground. So how it transverses through the structure.
And again, we don't want to. If I move it back, it could cause me to have to change some of the roof line on the offset, and that's what we don't want to do. We would like to redo it, but we want to keep everything the same, and just so that look is always there.
Sure.
And that's, while you're here, that's where I'm a little fuzzy on if you take a false chimney and you move it to that point, and let's just say for argument's sake, the false chimney is 3 feet wide running with the ridge beam. So it's 3 feet that way, and that's a little generous for a chimney, but 3 feet out to out, and maybe it's 4 feet the other direction. Or was it a really tiny historic chimney?
Yeah.
Actually, there's a picture of it in the staff report.
And of course, it was for burning coal, not for burning wood.
Yeah, so it's a smaller chimney. I'm just trying to figure out how all those things coming together and flashing. Okay, yeah, so it has some size to it, but concealing, and in looking at, if I understand this photograph correctly in the third dimension, really you want the chimney to sit out in front of what's projecting now?
Correct, just to move it. As the photo I gave you with a straight line, the aerial photo from satellite, you can see where the hole was for the chimney that was taken out. Again, that was before we took the project.
Yeah.
And again, it will be a false chimney, but if we could pull that chimney back, and that maintains, to me, maybe the historical roof line on the offset hides that, and it's not seen from the street view.
Well,
Other than maybe that point that you require, you could see a little to the side.
And are you, with this being a false chimney, you link in there's a lick and stick masonry sort of application?
I've presented that already. Yes, it is a real brick, and it's just a 1/2 inch thick, you know. So yeah, it's a lick and stick basically.
Right. They'll alley cast it, or custom. If you
match
them, they'll cut them.
That's where I went, alley casting.
Been there, done that. But if you put this chimney, say, right back towards the valley that's in the bay bump, how all that resolves itself just seems awfully tricky there.
I guess it would be best if I could ask that we could present some new drawings and show our plan in that, we're not trying to pull a fast one in any way. Again, we want to save this, but if we could present some new drawings and our ideas on it. I just was here today to address the violations that were presented.
And I think one of the things that helps us here is that is not a chimney that straddles the ridge, that's equidistant. It is on the slope fully based on the flashing that we're seeing there. So whether it's there or whether it's slid further over, I think there's room for modification.
Yeah, I don't remember. I thought the chimney was partially into the ridge, if you look at the photo, I believe it is. So, Yeah,
It's off- it's
again,
offset.
that little more on one side than the other thing, you know, so.
If I could ask, Robin, is this a scenario in terms of this additional drawing, or, so there's not a, if there's an amendment to the application, which I think this chimney situation might be to resolve this, is that a scenario to come back to the commission, or could there be a single commissioner who volunteered or was voluntold to help with this?
Yes.
Is that a scenario that would be acceptable when, I guess this also is to legal, where we could work through that?
Yes, it could definitely be staff level approval with the help of whoever makes the motion is usually who we go to when we need a little help.
Okay.
And if I could just read, I was kind of trying to craft the motion as we went. So if I could just read what my understanding is, and of course the motion can be whatever you want it to be, but that the roof configuration at 816 Bosco is approved with the conditions that the new street-facing ridge is cut back to the existing cross ridge. Does that sound right? And that the chimney is reconstructed in a similar location as the original, but back enough to help hide the taller portion of the ridge.
And depending on where he puts the chimney, you may not cut it back, just so that you don't create a valley there for where water would be trapped. But I think that's something that the commissioner and staff and Mr.
We'll
Gore
get
can
that
figure out.
forward to you, because we do want to try to get the hips and the valleys tied in correctly. And so we'll get those drawings to you if need be, and work with staff and the board.
Do we have to repeat that motion, Robin, or, so who's making the motion?
Well, it sounded like that was just part of that's an addition to the staff recommendation, part of the motion.
Okay. Commissioner Mosley? I'm drafting you.
With respect to 816 Boscobel Street, in consideration of the applicant's, I don't know if it's truly testimony, appearance here and presentation to the commission that, for show cause, that the applicant will present a plan narrative and necessary drawings to satisfy the exceptions taken in the show cause document, and that whose approval shall be made, or that this board would approve, assuming those things are done, that the staff would review those, and that a solution to the ridge be drawn and proposed by the applicant that would cut the existing newly constructed ridge and roof framing back to a point at or behind, as measured from the street, the Bay Ridge. Did I cover everything there, Robin?
Okay.
Is that it all clear?
One other thing, please. Again, I think the ridge too, when we were approved for.
Yes, we have a motion, so we.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second by Vice Chair? And all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Okay. Yeah, applicant, thank you for your detailed explanation. It does help us go through that, and you will continue to work, and they will see your revised plans.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so commissioners, do we need a break? We've been on board here for 2 hours, or, okay, bathroom break is good, excuse me. Let's give 10 minutes for just a minute. Okay, 10 minutes, thank you. Okay. Ms. Ziegler is back, our commissioners are back, and we are ready to go. Thank
All
you
right.
for the time.
All right, the next item on the agenda is 1816 Wildwood Avenue. Just as a note, you did receive public comment on this project, and it was uploaded to the SharePoint as it was received. All right, so this is an application to construct a rear addition with a ridge raise and an outbuilding. The application includes a setback determination to reduce the rear setback for the addition from 20 feet to 10 feet. The house is a circa 1941 brick minimal traditional that contributes to the historic character of the Belmont Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. I included a map here to show that this lot is particularly challenging given the irregular shape, truncated depth, and deep front setback of the historic house. The lot is, as you can see, irregularly shaped with a depth of approximately 143 feet along the left side property line and 120 feet along the right side property line. The historic house has a setback of approximately 58 feet from the front property line, which is particularly deep compared to what the commission typically sees. The addition meets all base zoning setbacks except for the rear, for which the applicant has requested a setback determination to reduce that from 20 feet to 10 feet. Staff finds that the requested setback determination can be appropriate in this case, given the irregular lot shape, truncated lot depth, and deep front setback of the historic house. In addition, the historic house and proposed addition combined have a depth of 50 feet and footprint of approximately 1,660 square feet, which is modest compared to the depth and footprint of most additions that come before the commission. The outbuilding meets all base zoning setbacks, but is located approximately 5 feet from the rear corner of the addition. However, the house and outbuilding are offset, and the 5-foot separation is only at that one point, as you can see. The majority of the addition is more than 20 feet from the outbuilding and more than 6 feet from any adjacent structure. Vehicular access to the property is currently via a curb cut from Wildwood Avenue, as the lot does not have alley access. The project includes extending a driveway to the outbuilding and expanding an existing front parking pad so that it's closer to the street and extends more in front of the historic house. The site plan shows that the front walkway is to be rerouted to tie into the proposed parking pad. In the past, the commission has found that front yard parking pads are not appropriate in historic overlays. On this block of Wildwood Avenue, there are some examples of front yard parking pads, but those are mostly limited to infill projects that were constructed or permitted prior to the adoption of the overlay. In order to meet the design guidelines, staff recommends that the driveway be limited to 12 feet in width between the house and the street. The existing and proposed front yard parking pads be removed, and the front walkway either extend to the street or tie into the driveway since there's not an existing public sidewalk. The proposed addition incorporates a ridge raise that meets the design guidelines. As proposed, the new construction is inset appropriately and does not more than double the footprint of the historic house. And here are the left side and rear elevations. The proposed outbuilding has a footprint of 550 square feet with a ridge height of 20 feet 10 inches. While the footprint meets the design guidelines, the ridge height exceeds the house, which is 19 feet 9 inches, not including the proposed ridge raise. At 19 feet 9 inches, the house is modest in height, and in the past, when historic houses have been under 20 feet, the commission has approved outbuildings that are up to 21 feet tall from grade in order to allow a minimum height that can accommodate space upstairs. Also, in this case, the lot slopes from the street, so the extra 13 inches is unlikely to be visible from the street. So for these reasons, staff finds that the proposed ridge height for the outbuilding can be appropriate in this case. The primary eave height of the outbuilding is 9 foot 2 inches, which does not exceed that of the historic house. However, there is a stair tower element that has one taller eave, which is 15 feet at the rear. While that eave height does exceed the design guidelines, staff finds that it can be appropriate given the challenges of the lot. And given those challenges, the overall footprint of the building is much smaller than would be permitted for this lot. Given the site constraints along with the modest footprint, staff finds the taller eave at the rear of the outbuilding could be appropriate in this case and would unlikely set a precedent for future decisions. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the project, including the setback determination, with the conditions set forth in the staff recommendation, including 1 through 3, which regard the driveway width, the front yard parking pads, and the walkway location if that is relocated as proposed.
Thank you, Melissa. Any questions for the moment? Okay.
All right.
Good afternoon. I'm Preston Quirk, architect for this project. My client, Dallin Hudson, is here with me. Melissa said it very well. This is an addition proposed on a very odd-shaped lot. We consulted with Melissa and obviously had a lot of things to discuss as the design was being developed. One thing we were told along the way is apparently the commission, I don't think I've had a project on a lot quite like this, but the commission has approved a 10-foot rear setback on other projects in the past. I don't know where those are, but that's just a little bit of history I was told. Melissa commented this addition is smaller than what's normally allowed. The current house has a 980 square foot footprint. The addition proposed is 589 square feet in footprint, which is 60% of the size of the existing house. Normally we're allowed to replicate the same size of the existing house as for an addition. We were contacted, I think late last week by the neighbor behind us, which has a very contemporary house that was built, I think, before the overlay was in this district. Mr. Hudson spoke with her briefly. We're willing to look at some modifications on the rear roof if that makes a difference. There's one gable back there we could change to a hip pretty easily. He offered that we could do a landscaping screen, but I don't think had a whole lot of comment from the owner about it, and I don't think she is here today. That neighbor also has a house on an odd-shaped lot. We do feel that the lot shape and the house placement on this lot could be justification for a variance in this case. I know that some of the neighbors don't agree and have written to you, and I think you may hear from some in a minute. Today, this meeting is so we can discuss this and decide if the setback is appropriate in this case. This case was on consent due to the staff determination that it meets the design guidelines, but that is subject to approval of the setback determination. And I'd like to reserve about 2 minutes for rebuttal time. And I will say we're in agreement with the staff conditions that Melissa presented on this.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kirk.
Thank you.
Open public hearing. And again, we had some comments that were in SharePoint, so that was duly noted. Close public hearing. Okay. Commissioners?
So there was some comment for and against, and I think against was they are against the encroachment into the 20-foot rear setback. But looking at this lot, because it is oddly shaped and it's not straight line, and even encroaching portion is only 20% of the modestly designed outbuilding. And majority of the add-on is not encroaching the 20 feet setback, and just only 20% of the modestly designed outbuilding. And height is, for whatever the reason, the comment says 29 feet height, but height of the outbuilding is only 20 feet, little over 20 feet. So I think this modification, setback determination from 20 feet to 10 feet is quite reasonable. So I am inclined to support staff recommendation, and especially applicant agree on all the conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner. And also historically, this commission does have the to be able to have this, to shorten the setback, to determine the setback. So this is not setting any precedents. It's just get that out there.
Yep. Madam Chair, I think the staff did, both the applicant and the staff working together did an excellent job, and I am in agreement with the staff's analysis on this project that it certainly, the modest, of course, depending on your perspective, the modest nature of the addition to a very modest house is appropriate, both and within the guidelines, the setback determination. I think keeping the 20 feet forces the applicant to do something that might not fit nearly as well, and is overly punitive in my read of the guidelines and in terms of what our purview here is. So with that, I recommend approval as submitted with the staff's recommendations, all the staff recommendations of 1816 Wildwood Avenue.
There's a motion by Commissioner and
Second.
And second by Commissioner Cotton. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, next up is 2614 Barton, which is a circa 1930 brick Tudor revival bungalow that contributes to the historic character of Hillsborough West End. The applicant proposes a rear addition and closing the side porch. So here's a floor plan. The addition is inset about 4 feet on the left side and 2 feet on the right side from the back corners of the house. The addition steps back out after an inset to line up with the right side on the historic house. On the right side, it lines up with the historic house's side wall, and on the left side, once it steps back out, it's still inset 2 feet from the side wall of the historic house. The historic house has a footprint of about 1,260 square feet, and the applicant is proposing to add a footprint of about 885 square feet. Here's the roof plan, which kind of does show nicely the insets. Here's the right side elevation. While the addition's ridge height is no taller than the ridge height of the historic house, its wall height is taller. The addition has a wall height that is between 5 and 7 feet taller than the historic house's wall height. Staff finds that the wall height of the connector part of the addition could be appropriate because inset over 4 feet on the left side and 2 feet from the right side, and because its depth is relatively modest. However, staff finds that the wall heights of the side gable portion of the addition are out of scale with the historic house. On the right side, this wall height, which is 5 feet taller than the wall height of the historic house, is not inset, but lines up with the side wall of the historic house. This wall height is in the same plane as the historic house's side wall, so not the porch, but the main side wall of the historic house. On the left facade, this portion is inset 2 feet, but the wall height is still over 5 feet, about 5 feet taller than the historic house's wall height. Staff recommends that the wall heights of the side gables part of the addition be lowered to match the wall height of the historic house. Here's the rear elevation. Overall, staff finds that the rest of the addition's design meets the design guidelines. It's just an issue with those eave heights. And so here is our recommendation. Again, it's the standard conditions with the number 3 being the wall heights of the side gable portions of the addition be no taller than the wall height of the historic house. The applicant is here, would like to speak.
Thank you, Melissa.
Please pass these around, there's plenty. Am I on? Yes. No? Yes. I'm on. I can't tell. I can't hear. Thank you, Commissioners. My name's Van Pond. I'm the architect for this project. We appreciate staff's commentary and discussion with us on this. This particular project, there's a existing site retaining wall that's what I'm sending around to you, just to kind of give you a view on a site grading challenge. We really, in an ideal situation, in a historic house with a very relatively level lot and no great grade changes, we would probably have stretched this out deeper. This wall that you'll see the pictures of there, I don't think is original since it is stepped concrete block. However, the configuration of the house leads me to believe that probably a failed rock wall that was there originally was replaced to maintain the grade that was set up for the rear entry garage that was original to the house, and you'll see that in the pictures. That puts us in a position of a little bit more compact footprint than we might. I think staff said the footprint that they measured was 857. We measured it at 737, but it's less scale than the existing house. The site does slope pretty drastically. You can see we add a whole floor of height as we go to the rear. We'd like your consideration of letting us have the higher eave heights for two reasons. One, grade change without going to extravagant circumstances of regrading the lot, moving the wall, and then also then disturbing neighbors. As well as this addition is going to be invisible from the street. The house to the right, where we are actually flush with our projecting back, is very tight to this house. So this addition exists in the shadow of the entire existing house. We have not asked for a ridge raise. We have not extended across the entire rear of the house. So we would like some consideration on those 2 points. Of course, we will, as always, work with staff depending on what you all recommend. I'm happy to take any questions.
And I'm looking at when you take the screen porches on 2 levels, and it kind of creates a cross-gabled scenario, appropriate response. If we do this, you take a footprint and you reduce it by a third
to a
being
half.
generous, maybe a third to a half.
Correct.
Architecturally, that's what you do. The only other solution is to make it less compact to get the same footprint, or maybe not same footprint, to get the same under roof area, it gets larger. Is that accurate in the analysis?
That's correct. The codicil to that might be to say that while we could find a way to lower the apparent eaves, and this is something I see all over the neighborhoods, all over the neighborhoods, I said that wrong, all over this particular neighborhood, is we end up with a eave height that matches and then basically a bunch of square flat roof dormers off that eave. So we kind of created a lower mass in theory and then made it a box, which, sure, okay, fine, that's reasonable, but then we end up with an addition to a historic house that has a lot of flat roofs. That's not how houses were built. We have rain here. We're not in California. When we can do sloped roofs, we like to do that. This gives us that opportunity to kind of make the space. It does differentiate the addition from the house very directly. And again, if we were asking for this and we were the full width of the back of the house and we were just going for everything, it might not be as a viable an option to consider. But since this is not, and very consciously not, that's one thing we'd like to make point of.
And I asked the question in the context of, I don't disagree with the staff's analysis of wall height. What next? And then this sort of speaks to that. And I wanted to ask the question, maybe have a little discussion about that for everybody's consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All for now, Mr. Pond.
Okay.
Open public hearing. Close public hearing. Discussion.
I do have one question for you. Sorry. Well, I know we've closed public hearing, but this one is worthy of asking. I'm assuming this is a segmental wall that likely has, may have some reinforcing. How tall is it? Let me start with the reasonable
If you
question.
look, hold on, can I have that sheet?
Well, it looks about four-ish feet, 4.5 feet, something like that.
It's 5 foot 2.5 inches tall.
So it could be a gravity wall and not necessarily a wall where you're going to be, you possibly are getting into the angular pose on that and.
The likelihood is it's a gravity wall, and we have tried to stay about 5.5 feet away from it because we're going to have to over excavate for some footings.
Sure.
Just to.
I was kind of begging the question of if we're already going there and the wall needs to be whatever.
I'm trying to stay away from it.
Sure.
I wasn't there. The wall was there before the owners that currently own the house, that have owned it for a while, bought it.
Sure.
So
who knows? We'll see. Yeah, got it.
I would say likely least sophisticated option.
Okay, very good.
I think I'm going to, just to get us going, to staff, give us again the recommendation on, on maybe where it leads us on the guidelines to number 3.
Sure. So the recommendation is to bring the eave height down. Let me just pull up I don't have a printout of the recommendation. I believe the design guidelines do talk about having wall heights of additions be similar to wall heights of the historic house, but let me pull up the design guidelines.
That's where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just while I do that, I just wanted to make a note that there is a typo on the screen, that it's actually the Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay, not Belmont Hillsborough. So just make a note of that in your, however you vote. Note that I have the wrong, it's right in the PDF of the staff recommendation. It just is wrong on the screen.
Okay. Oh, it's Belmont Hillsborough.
It should be Hillsborough West End, but I wrote Belmont
Hillsborough.
Hillsborough on the screen, so I apologize about that.
Okay.
It's right on the PDF though, that was in the SharePoint, so.
Okay.
I'm finding it.
Just for clarification, really, it's, give us some time as the commissioners absorb information.
Okay, section 2B1A states that the height of the foundation wall, porch roofs, and main roof of a house should be compatible by not contrasting greatly. The size of a new building, its mass in relation to open space shall be compatible by not contrasting greatly. Let me find the next kind of other ones. I think we now analyzed it under that. And find height and scale. Okay. Oh, thank you, Jenny. So, do what section this is?
I see that.
Section 2 additions, 2D, I think, is where it says, 2D, yeah. Thank you. The height of the addition's roof and eaves must be less than or equal to the existing structure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
A question, and this is probably for Commissioner Mosley. So what we'd be looking at then technically is looking at this side view on the back gable, dropping the height down to basically even with what the first floor would do, which would create more of a pitched roof, which would require then big dormers going out from either side to get them where they are square footage wise.
I mean, that's
up to the architect, right?
Van
Right.
would provide, but I think if you take a floor plan, to an owner who has their needs, that's not for us to necessarily accommodate. But if you take that and it's got a reasonable head height out to here, and then that reasonable head height, goes like this, then it's a different project, or potentially a different project in terms of its footprint and some other things to meet the needs. I don't know that it'll end up that way, but it just was a question I wanted to.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. Just visually, you look at it, and
I think not to necessarily say this is a solution. The other solution is more, and likely beyond. The other equivalent solution is more of the lot, and likely beyond. Whether we'd approve that or not is another issue. But it's a deeper house, and it is shaped to have those eaves meet. It's shaped larger in footprint, I would guess, to meet the same. If you just accept that there's this much usable square footage that the owner wants to meet that same thing, it would be bigger. The math would make it bigger. I don't know that is an argument that weighs enough to blush by or trample over or whatever, the other guideline. But I think it's worthy of consideration. It's not always the case. If you don't do this, then you will do that. But it's worth consideration of which of those two things might be more or less desirable.
Commissioners, they use a minimum amount of rebuttal time.
There's no public comment to rebut.
Yeah, I echo Robin. Yeah. If the commission has specific questions they want to direct, they can direct those questions, but that's the format that we're in right now in the context of your discussion, yeah.
Thank you, legal.
I think the other, maybe in furtherance of this discussion, if you look at the existing back of the house, and I think that's what the applicant was sort of alluding to, is that you sort of false in this roof line and then you pop up a dormer. I don't know that would be the solution here, but that is how it's been solved in other cases. And does that yield better or worse? I don't, not, that's a matter of debate.
Well, I don't know which way to go, but, since the guideline is guideline, I do understand, if we try to ask the architect, applicant to reduce the wall height, yes, naturally, roof line has to go narrower or whatever the case. But guideline is there for a reason. So I don't think I do not hear enough reason to why we should ignore the guideline. So understand the, wall and, situation, but I think there's always a way, and it's not for us to solve every single issue homeowner wants to create. And sometimes, homeowner may have to work with the architect to which side to compromise. But that's not for us to decide. So I think our job is to adhere to guideline. So for that reason, as much as I do appreciate the input from the, applicant, but I would support staff recommendation.
Other discussion? If not, please make a motion. Other discussion? Okay. Commissioner Johnson, would you like to make a motion?
For 2614 Benton Avenue, I move to approve staff recommendation, including all the conditions.
There's a motion. There's a second by Dr. Williams. All in favor? Any opposed? One opposition from Commissioner Mosley. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, and that motion passes.
Correct. You have
Yes.
4 votes.
For 4 concurring votes. All right. Thank you very much. Applicant, continue to work.
Okay, I think this is our last one. The existing structure, which is 3912 Kimpalong, the existing structure is about from 1950. It does not contribute to the historic character of the Woodlawn West neighborhood. Staff has issued an administrative permit for its demolition. The applicant is proposing new infill and an outbuilding. I'll just start by showing some of the historic context. The picture on the top, on the left is the site in question, and on the right is infill that was approved in about 2016. On the bottom, the site that we're talking about today is on the right, and the house to its left. There's top is houses across the street, and the bottom are houses to the right of the site. So here is the site plan. The lot is wide at 100 feet. The infill and the outbuilding are meeting all the base zoning setbacks. There is an existing circular drive that they don't intend to enlarge, so it will be retained because it's existing. Here is the front facade. The proposed infill is 1.5 stories with a maximum height of 28 feet from grade. Staff finds this to meet the historic context where houses are 1 and 1.5 stories with heights ranging from 20 to 31 feet. The infill has a width of 64 feet 9 inches, but the main 1.5 story form is just 40 feet in width. Staff finds that this form and width are similar to other historic houses nearby on similarly sized lots and with similar forms, where houses are between 53 feet and 90 feet wide. The front entry you can see here and the porch floor are covered with a bracketed porch roof, covering the full width of the main form of the infill. While this design is not typical for the neighborhood, staff notes that many historic houses on the street have vestibule entrances rather than front porches. For this reason, staff finds the proposed bracketed front porch to be appropriate. Here is the left side elevation, and here's the right side elevation. Overall, staff finds that the infill's height, scale, materials, roof form, orientation, and proportion of window openings meet the design guidelines and the historic context. There's also a proposed garage. Here are 3 of the 4 garage elevations. All of these elevations meet the design guidelines. The only issue is with the rear-facing elevation. The design guidelines limit dormers to just 1 dormer, 14 feet width. They have 1 dormer that's 14 feet, and 1 dormer that's 10 feet. Staff recommends that the total width of the dormers on this facade be 14 feet. They could do 2 7-foot dormers, a 5-foot, they can do the math however they want, but no more than 14 feet. And here are just some renderings of the project. And so, in conclusion, we're recommending approval with the only kind of atypical condition being that the outbuilding's rear-facing dormers have total widths that are no more than 14 feet when added together. And the applicant is here.
Thank you, Melissa.
Oh, I wanted to say that right before I left for here, about 12:30 or so, I got public comment, which I forwarded on, but it was relatively late in the day, so.
Okay.
Seth Argo, homeowner, 3912 Kimpalong. We enjoyed working with staff. We're in agreement with their suggestions and ready to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you for being here at the last project. Appreciate your time. Yes, open public hearing.
I'm Jeff Slayton. I live at 3919 Kimpalong, and I did email Melissa early in the afternoon and wasn't sure I could make it. But as these meetings go, they extend. I am an art history major. I've studied and walked around I've lived in my home since 1969, know every home in the area from Cherokee Park, where I am in Woodlawn West. And I understand, I'm not against a new infill home, but some of the stylistic features, when there are 1, 2, 3, 4 huge 4-foot plus brackets, maybe 5-foot brackets, I don't know the exact measurements, is really totally not in keeping with any historic home in Nashville, and certainly not in my overlay, in the Woodlawn West overlay. And I would just ask that I don't have a problem with a front porch of some kind, but that kind of feature could be removed and changed from the plans. The most important thing we do in the Conservation District and the Historic District is the facade. And a lot of these that I've seen pop up lately in the last few years, the facades aren't always conforming. And I really would ask that we would make the facades conforming to the neighborhood. That is certainly the utmost interest I think we all have. I mean, what a person does on the back of their house, I'm not worried about. But thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. Okay, close public hearing and discussion. I think I'm going to start to ask staff to bring up the point about the bracketed front. And it's not seen in this neighborhood typically. So your recommendation is to approve it. Can you give us some background on that?
About the front porch or about the
bracketed front porch?
Yeah, so I'll go back to some of the context photos. A lot of houses on Kimpalong don't have traditional front porches, as you can see. So although you may not see a bracketed kind of porch or covering, particularly one that doesn't cover the entire facade, staff kind of found that it was a more modern element that, because that could be appropriate here because there are several houses that don't have your traditional front porch. A lot of these houses were developed later, 1930s, 40s, where, that wasn't necessarily a common element that you might find in Belmont Hillsborough or Laughlin Springs. So we found that it could be appropriate here just because it's kind of a modern take on something in between a porch and a vestibule entry.
Okay.
Go back to that.
Thank you.
I'll just add to that real quick if I could.
Yes, please.
The guidelines and the Secretary of Interior standards don't want new construction to match historic buildings. It wants it to be respectful of them. And so there is that leeway to have some sort of contemporary version of historic elements. And so this could be sort of that for a series of porch posts, only it's brackets instead of posts. So that was the thinking, again, following those Secretary of Interior standards and those guidelines that allow for new construction to be of its own time.
Yes, duly noted. So, Commissioners, the applicant has agreed to all the recommendations stated. Are there any other concerns?
I think we certainly, go ahead. We heard some public comment here and there was some email. I don't know if those are I don't think those are from the same person. No. And I think in one of the photographs there was a bracket on the, on the side of the house not the same. It's not equivalent by any stretch. So does a bracket appear in the neighborhood? Is that justification here? I'm not sure, but I think I personally am. I don't find it not in keeping, and I can't find in the guidelines that there's an exception that where I could just find an exception be taken to bracketry on the front porch. It is a repeated element, much in the same way that a column would be repeated. Are there explicit things this is one where I think you come down on either side of it, and the side that I come down on is it's a repeated element, and it is more of a modern interpretation of a support for the porch. Could it have a heavy beam that runs between the two, curved masonry pieces on either side of it? That is a bit more of a common detail that I think you could find in, maybe not used in the same way, but certainly that sort of false buttress wall is not uncommon. And could a beam run all the way across there? That, somebody might take issue with that as well. So those are my thoughts on it. As an architectural flourish or supporting piece, I don't take issue with it personally in my interpretation of the guidelines.
Thank you.
I'm on the same page. I think question was those oversized bracket is appropriate for this particular neighborhood or not. Hearing from the staff, because, we do interpret interior state, as a guideline, and they do not recommend exactly mimic existing, design. So, especially, I have seen a couple of houses not, pronounced like this, but yeah, some of the houses in the picture using a bracket, maybe not as much, but different usage. So I think otherwise, massing, material, and height, or the design meets guideline and fits in that neighborhood. So I'm in favor of staff recommendation in this case.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think the only other clarification when I'm reading the staff is that, just again, side note, because it's a new infill, that the MHC recommends approval of the front setback in the field to ensure what's the word? Okay, it's my English happening here. It's on page 8. Compatibility, thank you very much. So I think just to be sure that.
And when we issue our permits, that language is on all of our permits for infill, and it's part of the staking inspection that is done, that should be done, that is required, but hopefully is done, that's part of the staking inspection. So it did make it into the final, you can add it into the final list of conditions, but it is something that gets standardly put into every permit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
just wanted to clarify that as well.
it's part of the staking inspection that we check the front setbacks.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good. Okay. Any other concerns, questions, motion?
With respect to 3912 Kimballong Avenue, I move approval with the staff's recommendation, finding that the application is in keeping with the conservation overlay guidelines.
Very good. There's a motion. There's a second by Commissioner Cotton. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, anything else from legal or Ms. Ziegler?
Yes, I have a couple of things. I wanted to remind you that you are all invited to the Citizens Historic Preservation Academy's graduation, which will be right here this coming Monday at 5:30. The 13 participants will be giving little 5-minute presentations. They're all picking a historic building that has some kind of meaning to them and sharing something about it or something that they've learned throughout the course. And there's a few council members who will be present as well. And I know that the Chair Bell will be here.
I will be here.
And Trustee Gilmore will be attending because one of her staff members is one of the participants. So I think that'll be fun. And Tim will be handing out certificates. And unfortunately, this is our last meeting with Kelly. She will be leaving us on Friday. And she has really been, as I know you all know, a huge asset. A lot of great experience that she's shared. She's been a very valuable part of the team. And although she's very excited to go, we're not excited for her to go. She's excited about her new opportunity. So thank you.
Yes, Kelly, thank you. And we wish you well in your new role, which is a good thing. So, yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, staff. I think we're going to adjourn, other than please come to the Citizens Academy graduation. It would be good to have some representation from our zoning commission to support community. So this is very good. Thank you for having that as well, staff. Okay, thank you so much. All right, motion to adjourn, and we are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.